The year was 1513, and Niccolò Machiavelli found himself in a peculiar position. Exiled from Florence after the fall of the Medici, stripped of his political appointments and relegated to his small estate in Sant'Andrea, the former secretary of the Florentine Republic had ample time for observation and contemplation. It was during this period of enforced leisure that he embarked upon what would become one of his most controversial and least documented studies, an extensive examination of women engaged in the oldest profession seeking to understand the fundamental nature of power dynamics between the sexes. The investigation began almost by accident. Machiavelli had been frequenting the taverns and brothels of Florence not merely for pleasure, but as a student of human nature. He observed that these establishments served as microcosms of society itself, where power, money, and desire intersected in the most primal ways. Here, stripped of the veneer of civilization and courtly manners, he could observe humanity in its rawest form. The women who worked in these places, he reasoned, possessed insights into human nature that even the most learned philosophers lacked. What started as casual observation evolved into a systematic study. Machiavelli began documenting his encounters, not with prurient interest, but with the methodical approach of a natural philosopher. He carried with him a small leather-bound journal, its pages filled with observations written in his characteristic precise script. Each entry detailed not just the physical attributes of his subjects, but their methods of persuasion, their strategies for survival, and their understanding of male psychology. The brothels of Renaissance Italy were complex social institutions, operating under an intricate web of rules, hierarchies, and unspoken agreements. The women who worked within these establishments ranged from desperate peasants driven by poverty to sophisticated courtesans who commanded the attention of nobles and merchants alike. Machiavelli recognized that each category of woman employed different tactics, different forms of what he would later term strategic femininity. In his observations of the lower-tier establishments near the Ponte Vecchio, Machiavelli noted how women with limited resources maximized their appeal through calculated vulnerability. They perfected the art of appearing both innocent and experienced, capable of satisfying desire while maintaining an aura of untouchability that kept clients returning. These women, he wrote, understood instinctively what he had spent years learning in the political arena. That power often lay not in what one possessed, but in what one appeared to possess. The woman who sells her body, Machiavelli wrote in his journal, is engaged in the purest form of politics. She must read her client as I once read foreign ambassadors, discerning their desires not from their words but from their gestures, their hesitations, their unconscious tells. She must project strength when dealing with the violent, vulnerability when confronting the tender-hearted, and wisdom when facing those who seek more than mere physical gratification. The higher-class courtesans presented an entirely different case study. These women operated elaborate households, maintained extensive networks of influence, and wielded considerable soft power within Florentine society. Machiavelli was particularly intrigued by Caterina Sforza's former lady-in-waiting, Lucrezia, who had established herself as one of the most sought-after courtesans in the city. Through careful cultivation of relationships with influential men, she had created a web of obligations and dependencies that rivaled any political alliance Machiavelli had witnessed. During one particularly memorable evening at Lucrezia's establishment, Machiavelli observed her managing 3 distinct clients simultaneously: a Medici banking representative, a visiting Venetian merchant, and a local silk trader. Each man believed he was receiving her undivided attention, yet she masterfully divided her focus, extracting information from one while providing comfort to another, and negotiating business arrangements with the third. Her apartment became a center of informal diplomacy, where commercial deals were struck and political allegiances were tested. She operates a court more sophisticated than many I served in government, Machiavelli noted. Her power derives not from birth or appointment, but from her ability to make herself indispensable to those who possess formal authority. In this, she has achieved what few women of her station could ever dream: true autonomy. The psychological insights Machiavelli gained from these women proved revolutionary to his understanding of power dynamics. He discovered that successful practitioners in the trade possessed an intuitive grasp of what he would later codify in his political theories. They understood that perception often mattered more than reality, that timing was crucial in the exercise of influence, and that the ability to adapt one's persona to match the needs of the moment was essential for survival. One woman, a Neapolitan refugee named Isabella, particularly captured Machiavelli's attention. She had fled north after her family was caught in the crossfire of various noble feuds, arriving in Florence with nothing but her wit and determination. Within 2 years, she had established herself as the preferred companion of several prominent merchants and had begun investing her earnings in property and trade ventures. Isabella's story illuminated what Machiavelli saw as the fundamental difference between male and female applications of power, where men typically sought to accumulate visible markers of authority, titles, armies, territories. Women like Isabella built influence through relationships and reputation. She created value not through conquest, but through the cultivation of desire and dependency. The prince seeks to be feared, Machiavelli observed, but the courtesan seeks to be needed. Both achieve control, but through entirely different mechanisms. The prince's power is brittle, dependent upon the continued demonstration of force. The courtesan's power is fluid, able to adapt and persist even when circumstances change dramatically. As his study progressed, Machiavelli began to categorize the different types of women he encountered and their respective strategies. The innocents traded on youth and apparent naivety, allowing clients to feel protective and superior while skillfully extracting maximum compensation. The experienced leveraged their knowledge of human nature and sexual technique to create repeat customers who viewed them as irreplaceable. The intellectuals engaged clients in conversation and emotional intimacy, becoming confidants and advisors as much as physical companions. Most intriguing to Machiavelli were those he termed the chameleons, women who could seamlessly shift between all these personas depending upon the needs of their clients. These practitioners had mastered what he recognized as the ultimate political skill, the ability to be exactly what the situation demanded while never losing sight of one's own interests. The economic aspects of the trade also fascinated Machiavelli. He observed how successful women managed their earnings, often displaying more financial acumen than the merchants and nobles who patronized them. They understood market dynamics, diversified their investments, and planned for the inevitable decline of their primary asset. Many operated networks of younger women taking percentages of earnings in exchange for protection, training, and business guidance. One particularly astute operator, Francesca, had parlayed her success into ownership of 3 establishments and a thriving import business specializing in luxury fabrics from the East. She maintained detailed ledgers, cultivated relationships with suppliers across the Mediterranean, and employed a small army of women seamstresses and servants. When Machiavelli interviewed her, she spoke with the confidence and strategic thinking of any successful merchant prince. "Men believe they are purchasing my body," Francesca explained during one of their conversations, "but what they are actually buying is the fantasy of being desired by someone they cannot possess completely. The moment they could own me entirely, I would lose all value to them. Therefore, I must always remain slightly beyond their reach, even as I appear to be completely available." This insight struck Machiavelli as particularly profound. It illuminated a fundamental principle that applied far beyond the confines of the sex trade, that power often derived from scarcity, real or manufactured, and that the appearance of availability combined with the reality of limitation could create tremendous leverage. The more time Machiavelli spent in this world, the more he began to see parallels between the strategies employed by these women and the tactics he had observed in diplomatic and military contexts. The courtesan's careful management of multiple clients resembled the delicate balance of alliances that characterized Renaissance politics. The prostitute's ability to read and respond to masculine psychology mirrored the skills necessary for successful negotiation with foreign powers. Perhaps most significantly, he observed that many of these women possessed what he would later identify as virtue, that combination of skill, adaptability, and moral flexibility that he considered essential for success in an unpredictable world. They had learned to navigate circumstances beyond their control, turning disadvantages into opportunities and finding ways to thrive despite social and economic constraints that would have crushed less resourceful individuals. The religious implications of his study did not escape Machiavelli's attention. The Catholic Church's condemnation of prostitution stood in stark contrast to its tacit acceptance and regulation of the trade. He observed how many women maintained complex relationships with faith, often supporting religious institutions financially while living in direct contradiction. Some employed religious imagery and references in their work, understanding that the tension between sacred and profane could be psychologically powerful for their clients. One woman, Margarita, had transformed her establishment into a pseudo-religious experience, decorating her rooms with religious art and requiring clients to participate in elaborate rituals that mimicked religious confession. This theatrical approach proved remarkably successful, attracting a clientele that included several prominent clergy members who seemed to find the blasphemous nature of the experience particularly compelling. She has discovered, Machiavelli noted, that transgression requires the existence of rules to transgress. By incorporating religious elements into her practice, she increases both the perceived sinfulness and the actual excitement of the encounter. This demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of human psychology that rivals anything I learned in political service. The question of agency versus victimhood became central to Machiavelli's analysis. While he acknowledged that many women entered the trade due to circumstances beyond their control, poverty, family abandonment, social displacement, he was struck by how the most successful practitioners transformed their situations through strategic thinking and careful planning. They refused to see themselves as victims, instead adopting the mindset of entrepreneurs operating in a challenging but profitable market. This observation reinforced Machiavelli's broader philosophical conviction that fortune, while powerful, could be overcome through virtue. The women he studied had faced adverse fortuna in its most brutal forms: social condemnation, economic desperation, physical danger, yet many had found ways to not merely survive but prosper. They embodied his belief that human beings could shape their destinies through intelligence, adaptability, and strategic action. The social hierarchies within the trade proved as complex as those in any royal court. Machiavelli documented elaborate systems of precedence, alliance, and rivalry among women working in the same establishments. Veteran practitioners mentored newcomers while simultaneously competing with them for the most desirable clients. Informal codes of conduct govern everything from pricing to territorial boundaries to acceptable forms of client recruitment. These hierarchies were maintained through a combination of economic incentives, social pressure, and occasionally, the most successful women operated as informal leaders, mediating disputes and establishing standards that benefited the group while protecting their own positions. Machiavelli recognized these structures as examples of what he would later describe as the natural human tendency to create order and hierarchy even in the absence of formal governing institutions. The relationship between the women and local authorities provided another lens through which Machiavelli examined power dynamics. Official policy condemned the trade, yet practical considerations required its regulation and taxation. The result was a complex dance between brothel operators and city officials involving regular payments, strategic information sharing, and careful management of public appearances. Machiavelli observed how skilled practitioners navigated these official relationships, often serving as informal intelligence sources for authorities while maintaining enough independence to protect their operations. They understood that their value to the government lay not just in tax revenue but in their unique position to gather information from clients who often revealed secrets in unguarded moments. The international dimensions of the trade also captured Machiavelli's attention. Florence's position as a major commercial center attracted merchants, diplomats, and travelers from across Europe and beyond. The women who served this international clientele developed remarkable linguistic abilities and cultural knowledge. One establishment near the Palazzo Vecchio specialized in serving foreign dignitaries and wealthy travelers. The women working there spoke multiple languages, understood various cultural customs, and maintained detailed knowledge of international politics and trade conditions. They served as sources of information about foreign courts, market conditions, and political developments that rivaled the reports Machiavelli had received through official diplomatic channels. These women, he wrote, have created an alternative intelligence network that operates parallel to official diplomatic channels. Their clients share information freely, believing their revelations will remain confined to the bedroom. In reality, skilled practitioners compile and analyze this intelligence with the sophistication of professional diplomats. The psychological toll of the profession provided insights into human resilience and adaptation. Machiavelli observed that successful long-term practitioners developed sophisticated emotional management techniques, learning to compartmentalize their feelings and maintain psychological boundaries while appearing completely engaged with their clients. This emotional intelligence, he realized, represented a form of self-governance that paralleled the discipline required for effective political leadership. Many women created elaborate personal rituals and support networks to maintain their psychological health. They formed close friendships with other practitioners, often sharing resources and providing emotional support during difficult periods. Some maintained completely separate personal lives, using their earnings to support families or pursue interests that had nothing to do with their professional activities. The question of retirement and long-term planning revealed sophisticated strategic thinking among the most successful practitioners. Aware that their primary asset, physical attractiveness, was temporary, they developed complex succession plans. Some invested in property and business ventures, others trained and managed younger women, and still others used their accumulated social connections to transition into different roles within their communities. Machiavelli was particularly impressed by one woman, Beatrice, who had leveraged her connections with wealthy clients to establish herself as an informal banker and moneylender. Her reputation for discretion and her understanding of human nature made her a trusted confidant for merchants and nobles who needed financial services but wanted to avoid the scrutiny that came with formal banking relationships. She has transformed intimate knowledge into financial capital, Machiavelli observed. Her clients trust her not because of formal guarantees or legal protections, but because she understands their secrets and vulnerabilities. This creates a bond stronger than any contract. The competitive dynamics within the trade illuminated principles of market operation that Machiavelli found applicable to political and economic contexts. Women competed not just on physical attributes, but on service quality, reliability, discretion, and emotional intelligence. Those who survived and prospered understood that sustainable success required building genuine value propositions that went beyond mere physical gratification. Innovation played a crucial role in maintaining competitive advantage. Successful practitioners constantly experimented with new services, presentation styles, and client relationship strategies. They studied their competitors carefully, adapting successful techniques while developing unique selling propositions that differentiated them in the marketplace. The role of reputation in this economy provided clear examples of what Machiavelli would later identify as the importance of public perception in maintaining power and influence. A woman's reputation for beauty, skill, or discretion could command premium pricing and attract high-value clients. Conversely, damaged reputations could quickly destroy even well-established careers. Managing reputation required constant vigilance and strategic thinking. Successful practitioners cultivated relationships with key opinion leaders, other women, influential clients, establishment owners, who could enhance or damage their standing within the community. They understood that perception often mattered more than reality and that maintaining a positive public image required ongoing investment and attention. The technological and material aspects of the trade also revealed sophisticated business thinking. Successful establishments invested heavily in creating attractive environments, often rivaling the luxury found in noble households. They understood that ambiance and presentation significantly influenced client satisfaction and willingness to pay premium prices. Many women became experts in cosmetics, fashion, and interior design, understanding that their success depended not just on natural attributes but on their ability to enhance and present themselves effectively. They studied the preferences of their target markets, adapting their appearance and presentation to match evolving fashions and cultural preferences. The educational dimensions of the trade surprised Machiavelli with their sophistication. Many successful practitioners were well-read, maintaining libraries and engaging in intellectual pursuits that enhanced their appeal to educated clients. They understood that many men sought not just physical gratification but intellectual and emotional stimulation as well. Some establishments operated informal salons where clients could engage in discussions of literature, philosophy, and politics while enjoying other services. These venues became centers of cultural activity that rivaled formal academic institutions in the quality and sophistication of their conversations. The health and safety considerations within the trade revealed complex risk management strategies. Successful practitioners developed sophisticated understanding of human anatomy, disease prevention, and medical treatment. They maintained relationships with discreet medical practitioners and developed protocols for dealing with dangerous or unstable clients. The collective security arrangements among women working in the same areas demonstrated sophisticated organizational thinking. They established warning systems for dangerous clients, shared information about law enforcement activities, and provided mutual assistance during emergencies. These informal networks operated with the efficiency and coordination of formal military or commercial organizations. As Machiavelli's study progressed, he began to see broader implications for his understanding of human nature and social organization. The women he observed had created complex social and economic systems without formal legal frameworks or institutional support. Their success depended entirely on their ability to understand and respond to human psychology, market dynamics, and social pressures. The skills these women displayed, psychological insight, strategic thinking, risk management, relationship building, financial planning, were precisely the qualities Machiavelli considered essential for effective leadership in any context. Yet society accorded them no formal recognition or respect, treating them as social pariahs despite their demonstrated competence and success. This contradiction highlighted what Machiavelli saw as a fundamental flaw in social organization, the tendency to base status and authority on birth, formal position, or conventional morality rather than demonstrated ability and achievement. The women he studied possessed virtue in abundance, yet were denied the social recognition and formal power that less capable men enjoyed by virtue of their gender and social position. The international perspectives gained through his study reinforced Machiavelli's conviction that human nature transcended cultural and geographical boundaries. The strategies employed by Florentine practitioners differed only in detail from those he observed among women from other regions and cultures. The fundamental dynamics of power, desire, and exchange remained consistent across different social and cultural contexts. This universality suggested to Machiavelli that his observations might have broader applicability beyond the specific context of commercial sexuality. The principles he identified, the importance of understanding human psychology, the power of manufactured scarcity, the necessity of strategic adaptability, could inform approaches to diplomacy, military strategy, and political leadership. The economic data Machiavelli compiled revealed the substantial financial impact of the trade on the broader Florentine economy. The most successful establishments generated revenues comparable to major commercial enterprises, while the aggregate purchasing power of women working in the trade provided significant economic stimulus to other sectors. This economic significance stood in stark contrast to the moral condemnation the trade received from religious and civil authorities. Machiavelli observed that this contradiction created opportunities for corruption and inconsistent enforcement that ultimately undermined respect for law and authority more than the trade itself ever could. The seasonal and cyclical patterns within the trade revealed sophisticated understanding of market dynamics and demand forecasting. Successful practitioners adjusted their strategies based on religious calendars, commercial cycles, and political events. They understood that demand fluctuated predictably and planned their activities accordingly. During periods of high demand, such as major festivals or trade fairs, prices increased significantly while service quality often declined due to capacity constraints. Conversely, during slow periods, successful practitioners used reduced prices and enhanced services to maintain client relationships and market share. The documentation methods Machiavelli employed evolved throughout his study as he recognized the historical significance of his observations. His early notes focused primarily on individual encounters and personal reflections. Over time, he developed more systematic approaches to data collection, creating standardized formats for recording information about different types of practitioners and their strategies. His final methodology included detailed questionnaires, comparative analysis frameworks, and longitudinal tracking of individual careers and establishment operations. He recognized that he was documenting social and economic phenomena that were largely invisible to formal historical record-keeping, yet which played crucial roles in the actual functioning of society. The psychological profile that emerged from Machiavelli's study challenged conventional assumptions about feminine nature and capability. The most successful women in the trade displayed qualities traditionally associated with masculine leadership, strategic thinking, emotional control, financial acumen, while simultaneously mastering skills of emotional intelligence and interpersonal manipulation that exceeded anything Machiavelli had observed among male leaders. This combination suggested to him that traditional gender roles significantly underutilized human potential, and that societies might benefit from more flexible approaches to organizing social and economic relationships. The artificial constraints placed on women prevented society from fully utilizing their demonstrated capabilities and talents. The resilience displayed by women operating under extremely challenging conditions provided insights into human adaptability and the relationship between adversity and character development. Many of the most successful practitioners had overcome backgrounds of poverty, abuse, and social rejection to build prosperous and stable lives through their own efforts and intelligence. Their stories challenged Machiavelli's thinking about the relationship between circumstance and achievement. While fortune clearly played a role in determining initial conditions, the outcomes he observed demonstrated that individuals could overcome even severe disadvantages through strategic action and persistent effort. The network effects within the trade revealed sophisticated understanding of relationship management and mutual benefit creation. Successful practitioners understood that their long-term success depended not just on individual achievement but on the health and prosperity of their broader community. They invested time and resources in supporting other women, understanding that collective success created better conditions for individual prosperity. These network dynamics created informal institutions that provided services typically associated with formal organization, training, financial support, dispute resolution, collective security, market regulation. The effectiveness of these informal systems suggested that successful social organization might depend more on aligned incentives and mutual benefit than on formal authority structures. The luxury and consumer goods markets that developed around high-end establishments provided economic benefits that extended far beyond the immediate participants in the trade. Successful courtesans became significant consumers of fine clothing, jewelry, art, and furnishings, creating demand that supported artisans, merchants, and suppliers throughout the regional economy. This economic multiplier effect demonstrated the interconnected nature of commercial activity and challenged moral arguments that focused solely on the direct participants in the trade while ignoring its broader economic contributions. Machiavelli observed that moral condemnation often obscured practical economic realities that were crucial for understanding social phenomena. The artistic and cultural contributions of high-end establishments surprised Machiavelli with their sophistication and influence. Many successful courtesans became patrons of artists, writers, and musicians, commissioning works and supporting cultural activities that enriched the broader community. Their salons became venues for artistic innovation and intellectual exchange that rivaled formal academic institutions. This cultural role challenged conventional assumptions about the relationship between morality and cultural contribution. Women whose activities were officially condemned were simultaneously contributing to the artistic and intellectual life of the community in ways that enhanced its reputation and attractiveness. The political intelligence gathering that occurred through the trade provided information that was often more accurate and timely than formal diplomatic reporting. Clients revealed information in unguarded moments that they would never share through official channels, creating intelligence assets that were potentially valuable for state security and political planning. The informal nature of this intelligence network created both opportunities and risks. While the information could be valuable, its unofficial status made it difficult to verify and potentially dangerous to act upon. Machiavelli observed that successful integration of this intelligence required sophisticated analysis and cross-referencing with other sources. The relationship between formal law and actual practice highlighted the complexity of governance in situations where official policy conflicted with practical necessity and economic reality. Authorities faced the challenge of maintaining moral authority while dealing pragmatically with social and economic phenomena they could not eliminate through prohibition. This dynamic illustrated what Machiavelli saw as a fundamental tension in political leadership: the need to balance moral legitimacy with practical effectiveness. Leaders who ignored either consideration risked undermining their authority and effectiveness over time. The international reputation of Florence as a center for sophisticated adult entertainment attracted visitors and generated revenue that contributed to the city's broader economic and cultural prominence. This reputational asset existed alongside and sometimes in tension with Florence's image as a center of artistic and intellectual achievement. Managing these multiple reputational dimensions required sophisticated public relations strategies that acknowledged different audience expectations while maintaining overall civic coherence. Machiavelli observed that successful cities, like successful individuals, required the ability to present different faces to different constituencies while maintaining underlying strategic consistency. The technological innovations that emerged from the trade in areas such as cosmetics, contraception, disease prevention, and customer service often found applications in other economic sectors. The competitive pressures and client demands within the trade created incentives for innovation that benefited broader society. This innovative capacity demonstrated the economic value of competitive markets and customer-focused service delivery, even in sectors that faced moral and legal challenges. Machiavelli noted that prohibition and condemnation often prevented society from formally recognizing and building upon innovations that emerged from marginal sectors. The class and social mobility dynamics within the trade reveal both opportunities and limitations for individual advancement in Renaissance society. While some women achieved substantial wealth and social influence through their activities, their gains remained precarious and dependent upon continued market success. The barriers to converting commercial success into lasting social respectability highlighted the rigid class structures that characterized Renaissance society. Even women who accumulated significant wealth and demonstrated sophisticated business and social skills found it difficult to gain acceptance in conventional social circles. The aging and succession planning strategies employed by successful practitioners revealed sophisticated understanding of career life cycle management and wealth preservation. Many developed complex financial instruments and investment strategies that would preserve their accumulated wealth and provide income after their active careers ended. These strategies often involve diversification across multiple economic sectors, geographic regions, and investment vehicles. Successful women understood that their career earnings needed to support not just their immediate needs but their long-term security in a society that provided few safety nets for aging women without family support. The training and mentorship relationships within the trade created informal educational systems that were often more practical and effective than formal academic institutions. Experienced practitioners passed on not just technical skills but strategic thinking, psychological insight, and business management capabilities to younger women. This knowledge transfer system created cultural continuity and evolutionary improvement in practices and techniques over time. The most successful establishments developed reputations as training grounds that attracted ambitious young women from across the region. The dispute resolution mechanisms that developed within the trade demonstrated sophisticated understanding of conflict management and community governance. Without access to formal legal systems, practitioners developed alternative approaches to resolving conflicts over clients, territory, pricing, and service standards. These informal justice systems often proved more effective than formal legal processes because they were specifically designed to address the unique circumstances and relationships within the trade. They provided rapid resolution, maintained confidentiality, and focused on practical outcomes rather than abstract legal principles. The seasonal migration patterns of some practitioners revealed sophisticated understanding of market optimization and geographic arbitrage. Many successful women followed predictable annual cycles, moving between different cities and regions to maximize their earning potential throughout the year. These migration patterns created networks of professional relationships that spanned geographic boundaries and provided information about market conditions, client preferences, and business opportunities across different regions. The most successful practitioners became nodes in informal communication networks that facilitated commerce and cultural exchange. The religious and spiritual practices maintained by many women in the trade revealed complex relationships with formal religious institutions and personal faith. Despite official condemnation from the church, many practitioners maintained private religious observances and supported religious institutions financially. This relationship highlighted the difference between institutional religious authority and personal spiritual experience. Many women found ways to reconcile their professional activities with their spiritual beliefs through private theological reasoning that emphasized divine mercy, economic necessity, and the distinction between temporal and eternal concerns. The medical and health knowledge that accumulated within the trade often exceeded what was available through formal medical practitioners. The practical necessities of maintaining physical health and preventing disease created strong incentives for developing medical expertise and maintaining relationships with skilled healers. This medical knowledge often benefited the broader community as practitioners served as informal health advisors for other women and occasionally for their clients. The pragmatic medical approach that developed within the trade often proved more effective than the theoretical medicine practiced by formally trained physicians. The customer service innovations that emerged from competitive pressures within the trade established standards and practices that influenced other service industries. The emphasis on client satisfaction, repeat business, and reputation management created service delivery models that were later adopted by merchants, innkeepers, and other service providers. These innovations demonstrated the economic value of customer-focused business models and the competitive advantages that could be gained through superior service delivery. The most successful establishments became case studies in effective customer relationship management. As Machiavelli concluded his extensive study, he reflected on the broader implications of his observations for understanding human nature, social organization, and political leadership. The women he had observed possessed many of the qualities he considered essential for effective governance, yet they were excluded from formal political participation by virtue of their gender and social status. This exclusion represented what he saw as a massive waste of human potential and a fundamental flaw in existing social and political structures. The demonstrated capabilities of these women suggested that society might benefit significantly from more inclusive approaches to leadership selection and more flexible thinking about social roles and responsibilities. The economic and social systems that had developed around the trade demonstrated human creativity and adaptability in the face of legal prohibition and social condemnation. The informal institutions that emerged proved remarkably effective at providing services, maintaining order, and facilitating beneficial exchange despite operating outside formal legal frameworks. This institutional creativity suggested to Machiavelli that successful social organization might depend more on aligned incentives and practical necessity than on formal authority structures and moral prescriptions. The most effective institutions were those that recognized and worked with human nature, rather than those that attempted to suppress or ignore it. The psychological insights gained through his study reinforced Machiavelli's conviction that understanding human motivation was essential for effective leadership in any context. The women he observed had developed sophisticated understanding of human psychology not through formal study, but through practical necessity and careful observation. Their success in reading and responding to human nature provided models that could be applied to diplomatic negotiations, military leadership, and domestic governance. The principles they employed: understanding what people truly wanted rather than what they claimed to want, recognizing the power of emotion in decision-making, appreciating the importance of timing and presentation, were universally applicable to situations involving human interaction. The strategic thinking displayed by successful practitioners offered lessons in long-term planning, risk management, and adaptability that were relevant for political and military leadership. Their ability to thrive in uncertain and hostile environments demonstrated the importance of maintaining multiple contingency plans and the flexibility to adapt strategies as circumstances changed. The reputation management strategies employed within the trade provided insights into the relationship between perception and reality in the exercise of power and influence. Successful practitioners understood that their effectiveness depended not just on their actual capabilities, but on how those capabilities were perceived and communicated to relevant audiences. This understanding of perception management proved particularly relevant for political leadership, where public confidence and support were often more important than technical competence or moral righteousness. The most successful women had learned to project the qualities their clients valued while maintaining enough authenticity to build genuine relationships. The network building and relationship management skills demonstrated throughout the trade offered models for creating and maintaining political coalitions and diplomatic alliances. The informal alliance structures that developed among practitioners showed how mutual benefit could be maintained without formal agreements or enforcement mechanisms. These relationship management capabilities suggested approaches to international diplomacy and domestic coalition building that emphasized shared interests and mutual advantage rather than formal treaties and legal obligations. The most stable and productive relationships were those based on ongoing mutual benefit rather than abstract commitments. The financial management and investment strategies employed by successful practitioners provided insights into economic development and wealth creation that were applicable to broader governmental and commercial contexts. Their understanding of market dynamics, risk diversification, and long-term planning demonstrated sophisticated economic thinking. The entrepreneurial capabilities displayed within the trade suggested that economic development might benefit from approaches that emphasized individual initiative and market responsiveness rather than centralized planning and regulatory control. The most successful enterprises were those that remained close to market demands and maintained flexibility to adapt to changing conditions. Machiavelli's study ultimately reinforced his belief that successful leadership required the ability to see past conventional moral categories to understand the underlying dynamics of human behavior and social organization. The women, he observed, had achieved remarkable success precisely because they focused on practical effectiveness rather than moral respectability. Their example suggested that political leaders might benefit from similar pragmatic approaches that emphasized results over reputation and effectiveness over conventional propriety. The most successful rulers would be those who understood human nature as it actually existed rather than as moral philosophers claimed it should exist. The documentation Machiavelli compiled represented what he recognized as a unique window into aspects of human nature and social organization that were typically hidden from formal historical record. The insights gained through his study informed his later political writings and contributed to his understanding of the relationship between private behavior and public institutions. His methodology, careful observation, systematic documentation, comparative analysis, established approaches to social investigation that would prove influential for later students of human behavior and political organization. His willingness to look beyond conventional moral categories to examine actual human behavior provided a model for empirical social research. The 500 women Machiavelli observed over the course of his study represented a cross-section of human capability, creativity, and resilience that challenged conventional assumptions about feminine nature and social organization. Their stories demonstrated that human potential could flourish even under adverse conditions when individuals possessed the strategic thinking, emotional intelligence, and practical skills necessary for success. Their hidden nature, as Machiavelli discovered, was not fundamentally different from human nature in general, driven by desire for security, respect, and autonomy, capable of remarkable achievement when properly motivated, and possessed of sophisticated understanding of the social and economic dynamics that governed their world. The difference lay not in their essential nature, but in their circumstances and the strategies those circumstances had forced them to develop. The broader implications of Machiavelli's study extended far beyond the immediate context of commercial sexuality to illuminate fundamental questions about power, leadership, and social organization that remained relevant for political theory and practice. The women he examined had created a parallel world that operated according to principles of effectiveness, mutual benefit, and strategic thinking that offered alternatives to the formal political and social structures of his time. Their example suggested that human society possessed far more potential for creative organization and effective governance than conventional institutions typically realized. The informal structures they created often proved more responsive, efficient, and stable than formal institutions that possessed official authority but lacked practical effectiveness. As Machiavelli reflected on his extensive observations, he concluded that the hidden nature he had discovered was not limited to women in the trade, but represented untapped human potential that existed throughout society. The strategic thinking, psychological insight, and adaptive capability he had observed could be found among many individuals whose circumstances forced them to develop sophisticated survival and success strategies. The challenge for political leaders and social reformers was to recognize this potential and create institutions that could harness it effectively for broader social benefit. This would require moving beyond conventional moral categories and social prejudices to focus on demonstrated capability and practical effectiveness. The legacy of Machiavelli's study lay not in its specific observations about commercial sexuality, but in its demonstration that careful empirical investigation could reveal insights about human nature and social organization that were hidden from conventional analysis. His willingness to examine marginal sectors of society provided a model for understanding social dynamics that would inform political theory and practice for centuries to come. The 500 women whose stories he documented represented thousands more whose capabilities remained unrecognized and whose potential contributions to society remained unrealized due to artificial social constraints and conventional prejudices. Their hidden nature suggested vast reserves of human talent and creativity that could be mobilized for social benefit if leaders possessed the wisdom and courage to look beyond superficial categories to recognize underlying human potential. In the end, Machiavelli's investigation revealed that the fundamental challenge of political leadership was not to control or suppress human nature, but to understand it sufficiently well to create institutions and policies that channeled human energy and capability towards socially beneficial outcomes. The women he studied had succeeded precisely because they worked with human nature rather than against it, creating value through voluntary exchange and mutual benefit rather than coercion and control. Their example provided a blueprint for political leadership that emphasized practical effectiveness over moral posturing, strategic thinking over ideological rigidity, and adaptive capability over bureaucratic procedure. The hidden nature Machiavelli discovered represented the untapped potential that existed within human society, waiting to be recognized and properly channeled by leaders wise enough to see beyond conventional categories to the underlying realities of human motivation and capability.